again. Welcome to the Marc Oslar Retirement Experience. My name is Randy Cook. I'm here each week with Marc Oslar, who's been helping people for an awfully long time work on their retirement, plan their retirement, and probably fix their retirement too, because along the way, things change. And you may come up against something, 5, 6, 10 years into retirement. You go, why I didn't expect this would happen. Well, that's what we want to do. We want to sit here and put together a strategy for your retirement so we take some of that stuff into consideration. We'll go through that in just a few minutes here. But for right now, Marc, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Randy. I mean, it's a great day out there. I'm just super excited to talk to folks out there and just discuss different financial elements of their lives and see if we can affect lives in a positive way here today.
Well, last week when we were doing the show, you were saying that you had a couple of live events coming up, which you do over at Ray's, which is some great food over there for sure. Any questions along the way? What are people interested in? I know that we talk all the time about how the number one fear of people in retirement is running out of money, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But what are the people asking when you do your presentations? What are the questions that come out?
There's several questions. I mean, one of the things that I found really interesting most recently was a little bit of elevated interest in annuities and just understanding, are they in the right particular annuities they currently have? Or, hey, I have some money sitting on the sidelines and I would like this to be on the conservative side of things. Maybe we should talk about fixed index annuities or multi-year guarantee annuities. And why are multi-year guarantee annuities such higher interest rate than CDs and so on and so forth? So these are the types of conversations. And then, of course, Roth conversions. That's a big one.
We're going to hit that in a second segment today and just talk through all of that aspect. Who is it good for? At what point should you do it? How much should you do it? 100%, 50%? When should you have it done? All that kind of stuff. So we'll deal with that in just a couple of minutes here. But we're gonna take a cue today from David Letterman because he made his living on doing lists. So our first segment is all full of lists here today. So if you watch Sunday morning TV, you'll see a lot of financial shows, and you'll see one from Barron's that's out there every week. And they had a financial advisor on, and she was talking about the fear of running out of money. And her idea of, if we can pinpoint these three things, if we have a strategy for these three things, we can probably do okay in retirement. So here's her list. It says we have to account for unanticipated health events, unanticipated market events, and client splurges that break the budget. That kind of made my eyebrows go up a little bit because you and I talk about the first two an awful lot. So tell me about this. I mean, do people come in and say, Marc, I want to do a 90-day, all summer long, across the country RV trip, and here's how much it costs. Let's work that in. Or do they come to you afterwards and say, we just spent $25,000 going to Italy, figure it out? What is going on there with big client splurges? I'm interested in that one.
Well, let's go to a personal level here. So let me go back to right before COVID started, right? We had actually purchased the materials to do a new roof on our house and then change our masonite siding out for vinyl siding. Okay. Because I just wanted less maintenance, ease of use, and I just wanted a 30-year shingle at that point, right? Mm-hmm. So we got that pricing done. So obviously when things hit in COVID and lumber went up and all these things occurred, shingles went up, things got complicated for folks, but we had already priced ours in. So we got the job done at some point. It took a little while to get all the material in, get all the job done. So we got that job done, right? Mm-hmm. So let's fast forward to 2 summers ago. We'll go back to 2024. We said we want to switch out our standing shower and our garden tub, and we want to switch out our shower tub combo in the other bathroom. We want to do those things. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, you would think that certainly couldn't be as expensive as vinyl siding and a new roof, right? Mm-hmm. Well, all you have to do is separate the pricing of 4 to 5 years, and they were the exact same price.
Interesting.
These things happen in retirement where, hey, maybe you want to change out all the bricks that are falling apart on your steps, right? Because you own this house. You need new bathroom tubs, showers. You need to replace certain things in life, right? So, yes, these are unexpected things you don't really think much about, or the fact that maybe after 10 years, you do want another car, right? These things need to be built into the plan because these are sometimes things that you don't think about that might break the bank, or that dream vacation. If you don't plan for it or you don't put that in place, are we doing the things that are going to prepare us for retirement in a way where we don't worry because we have this pocket and this pocket and this pocket, and we've prepared for it. So yes, 100% I agree with that.
So it's like we need a line item. We need to have, say, okay, next year we're going to go to Italy, and we've always wanted to do that, and here's the money, and we're going to put that in the line item, and that's there, and that's a lot different than going kind of on a whim and saying, hey, I just heard about a great cruise that's going to last, a month, and it's going to cost $50,000 each, and let's do it. And without even looking at what that would do to your retirement plan. I can't believe that a lot of people do that, but maybe they do. I don't know. But to sit down and plan out those items, because as Marcus said, there's things that are going to happen that are regular maintenance on you and your house and your car and all that stuff. That's going to come up. But the things that you want to do in retirement, let's put those in there so that you feel good about doing it. Here's the number. Here's the website to sit down with Marc and just kind of explore all of this and say, what am I in for in retirement? I see some of my friends retire. They seem to be doing okay. How's it going to work out for me? Well, let's do the math on that. Moretoretire.com is the website. You can start right there. There's a place for you to put some information in there. Marc reaches out to you, or you can just flip that and reach out to him right now. Get a date on a calendar. 984-300-1984 is the number. 984-300-1984. Let's get a date on the calendar. No cost, no obligation meeting about your retirement. All right, so when you hire a financial advisor, what do you expect? I think some people expect, he's got the secret. He's got all the exotic, crazy secret investments that he's going to put me in, make me lots of money. And maybe that's true. I don't know. But sometimes investing can be boring. And it's maybe supposed to be boring. The people at Vanguard, there's a lot of people, they call themselves Bogleheads. They follow Jack Bogle. Now, Jack Bogle has passed, but he was the guy who came up with the index fund. He came up with it. He ran Vanguard for an awfully long time, and he was a very conservative investor. And they say, follow the Bogle rules. The simpler, the better. If you use these 3 funds, you'll probably be fine in retirement. They are a U.S. stock market index fund, an international stock market index fund, and a U.S. bond index fund. That's pretty boring. It's not real exotic. Tell me, Marc, when you look at that, is it too simple? Well, is there something that's missing here? Could somebody get by on this? What do you see?
Yeah, it depends on the person's age, but obviously the younger you are, the younger man's game is all about accumulation. So if you want to balance the portfolio out, it's an easy way where you can kind of just say, hey, okay, let's go static. And if I've got 30 years to do this thing, over a course of 30 years, is it going to work out? Sure, even if you have a recession built in there or maybe a couple of recessions, the part where it becomes a problem is what if the back half of what you were trying to do when you retired happened to be during the last 2 recessions at the same time. So if somebody wanted to go retire at 2009 or 2010, there could have been a massive undertaking of what you could have expected from the year 2000 to 2010. That's where it can be a little complicated. But as a whole, the closer you get to retirement, the more conservative you want to get in terms of how your money's allocated. But I would say if you're being static, yeah, it's a young man's game. Mm-hmm. It's an easy, boring way to go about and participate and get the gains you're looking for, because at some point after you hit that accumulation stage, you're going to get into preservation/distribution. The 3 things we talk about on this show are preservation, income, and growth. Mm-hmm. The things that I can help affect people's lives is showing you where you can have preservation tactics built in with your income when you get closer to retirement. So the closer you get, if you give me 3, 4, 5 years before, we can start talking about what you can do about that before you get to that point. And then growth. What's a good sensible growth with the remainder of the portfolio so we can set you up and get you prepared for retirement? So when I look at this, Randy, and we have this conversation, sure, investing can be boring. But if you have a 401k out there and you're not 59 and a half or you're not separated from the company, I'd be glad to just kind of go over with you what I think might be good strategies for you while you're in those plans as well.
Well, also know this. Let's see. They're from Vanguard, and they're interested in an index fund, an international fund, and a bond index fund. Does Vanguard have all those things? Oh, yes, they do. So they're basically,
convenient.
Yeah, isn't that convenient? Yeah, they're basically saying, hey, use our stuff and you're going to be just fine. But you know what is interesting to me about this? I mean, this list that we talked about and the other list that we talked about in this segment, no one has said anything about taxes. I mean, nobody has said anything here, and how important the idea of tax planning is, because so many of us come into our retirement with a 401k and an IRA, and that means we're going to have the conversation about taxes. And if this stuff gets you into a tax problem, that's not going to help you in retirement, is it?
No, and I'm so glad you brought this up, because when we talk about that acronym PIG, Preservation, Income, and Growth, when we go back to the income and we're looking at preservation tactics built in for the income, we're also highly considering how to prepare for taxes and inflation. If we effectively prepare for taxes and inflation, and as you said, all those other unexpected expenses that we talked about before, and we build all this stuff into our budget, there's going to be less concern going into the years when you're ready to take that income. And that's really important, because taxes and inflation can have a massive effect. If you were just used to the fact that everything was held down in terms of interest rates for a number of years, and then you got impacted all at once, like the high of inflation in June of 2022 of 9.1%, that could have hurt everybody. And now we're thinking, oh, we finally leveled off last year. You know, the tariff talk was crazy, but we leveled off. It looks like interest rates are dropping finally. But then we're back into a war. And then what happens? Inflation again, gas prices, oil prices, the barrels of oil over $100 a barrel. I mean, these conversations, if you prepare properly, you built what you've built, and we take enough preservation tools to build in ahead of time and during, and we're prepared for inflation and taxes ahead of time, then you effectively will not feel it like everybody else complaining out there.
Yeah, it's a great point, Mark, because I say to people who are listening to us right now, if you're getting ready to go into retirement, because that's really what this show is about, is to help you along the way, get you to retirement and through. But what if you were in retirement right now? Let's say you retired 2 years ago. You're in retirement right now, and you said, I need $6,000 or $8,000 a month. So Mark set you up for $8,000 a month, and then gas prices did what it's doing. And inflation is doing what it's doing. And all of a sudden you say, I don't need 8 now, I need 9. And what do you do? Okay, so your retirement portfolio and your retirement strategy should have this kind of thing built in, so that you are out on your cruise someplace and you don't have to be calling Mark saying, am I okay? So you know you're okay because you have this built into your plan. Let's have that conversation. We do it at no cost or obligation. It's basically a phone call, and to sit down and say, here's what I'm worried about. Here's what I'm concerned about. Can you help me? 984-300-1984 is the number. 984-300-1984, or use the website, which is moretoretire.com. Just spell it right out, moretoretire.com. So if you're over 50 years old, you know that you can put a little bit more in your 401k and a little bit more in your Roth. So right now, the top of what you can put in a Roth is $8,600. Now, you think about that, you'd have to do that an awfully long time in order to make a real big difference to your retirement accounts. So there is another option that you can look at. It's called the backdoor Roth, and that sounds kind of underhanded and illegal, but it's not. It's just what they call it. It is actually very, very common to move money from a 401k or an IRA over to a Roth. People are interested in this because it gets them out of the tax wash. It helps them later on in life, and it can help your heirs as well. So, Mark, here's the big question, though, is, I'm 65. I'm going to retire at 67. Now my RMD age is 75 because I was born after 1960. We're talking about late baby boomers now. You got a 10-year runway in order to do this. Do I start while I'm working? Do I wait until after I retire? Do I do a whole bunch at the beginning or a little bit at the beginning and more later? Do I do 50%, 100% of my money? There's a lot of questions here. How do you decide, and what's the process you go through of helping people with IRA to Roth conversions?
It's not always a common thing for somebody to do it all at once. I mean, that's more of the uncommon rule. I did do it recently for a client that had a small IRA, and he had a Roth already open, and we just kind of did we just did a move from his IRA to his Roth to combine the two, because it happened to be a year where he retired in December, and then this was January of the following year. I'm like, well, you don't have the income you had the year before. We can go ahead and do this and combine it, and this is what you're dealing with. He goes, I got plenty of money in the bank. I can pay the taxes. Okay, fantastic. These are the types of ideas that we have. These conceptual ideas, conversations, things that we could potentially do. So when you're talking about a backdoor Roth, it's very interesting because a lot of times people looking at backdoor Roth is because they make too much money to where they can actually or allowed to contribute to a Roth IRA. So a lot of times folks, let's say if you're under 50, it's $7,500 to a traditional IRA, and then you can convert that to a Roth. That's a backdoor Roth. That's how you do it. If you're 50 or older, you can contribute $8,600 to a traditional IRA and then convert that to a Roth IRA. When we start talking about Roth conversions, this is an active conversation amongst a lot of people that are coming close to retirement or who are in retirement, and they have to either age 73 or age 75 to start taking requirement minimum distributions from the traditional IRAs. So the conversation occurs, okay, do we want to start converting Roth? What we have to do is effectively, if we're going to get really deep into it, we obviously want to have tax professionals involved. With that being said, can we all look at tax brackets? Can we all look at an adjusted gross income on a tax return? Yes, we can do all of these things, right? So can we get a general broad idea of where you might be best not jumping from a 24% tax bracket to a 32%? The answer is yes. We can do all of these types of things. We can get general ideas of what you're facing, how you should go about this, and when you should do it. And we can come up with a plan that's effective for you and your needs. Now, if you say to me, well, Mark, what if I don't accomplish all the conversions before I hit 75 at required minimum distribution age? Well, it just means you have to take the required minimum distribution first in each particular year before you convert any more.
Okay.
And that's not an issue either. So these are the conversations we have, Randy.
Gotcha. So the balancing act then, to say, I would imagine that a lot of retirees are probably in the 12% tax bracket, but the next bracket that's up is 22. That's a pretty big jump. And so do you find that it's more of a 22% thing and up, or do people, can they stay in the 12% tax bracket and not go to 22? I imagine it just depends upon, what we're working with.
Yeah, a lot of times when I look at a person's tax brackets during their working years, they tend to be around that 22% tax bracket. And you can go into that 24 next, which is usually not that bad of a jump. And then you have all that leeway to get to the top of the 24% tax bracket. So it kind of opens you up to say, maybe it wouldn't be so bad right now. Now, when you retire, you could be dropping back to 12% and then shooting back up to 22%. Well, what's the better scenario for you? And that's the real conversation we have. When is it best for us to start this? And again, we've also talked about IRMA as well, right? So if you're going to turn on Social Security and Medicare at the same time, age 65, could you end up having to pay higher Medicare premiums for the first couple of years because you're retired right around that time and the last 2 years of your income was kind of high? Yeah. That could affect your Medicare premiums. But again, these are all the conversations we have ahead of time. And then if we have to have them afterwards, it's okay. You already hit that. There's no big deal in us being past one threshold and working towards the next. It's never too late. So that's why we have these conversations. And then people ask me about annuities, like fixed index annuities and stuff. Can you do internal conversions? Depends on the company. But I know several companies that do internal conversions as well.
So you mentioned earlier that you talked to a guy and you were going to do this on a small scale. And he said, I've got the money to pay the taxes. That's another question people have to be confronted with. So if you get a scenario, I've got $500,000 in my 401k and I want to convert this over 10 years and we're going to do $50,000 a year. Well, the tax bill on that probably is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of what, $10,000, $15,000? And that should come from another place. Well, people probably don't want to get into that money because they like that emergency fund. They like that cash slush fund there. Then some people might say, well, I'll just take it out of the 401k. And now instead of $50,000, now I got to take $65,000. Have you run into that people want to take the tax bill money right out of the 401k instead of taking it from a bank account?
Yeah, I mean, for example, like let's say we have a couple of brokerage accounts and we're just going to move some of the traditional IRA over to the Roth IRA as a conversion. Let's say it's $50,000, and then let's say you're all in taxes, staggered, and everything with federal and state ends up being like 25% of your money. Well, that's $12,500, right? So if you wanted to withhold it directly before moving it over, you could, but you'd be moving over $37,500. Now, people say, oh, well, I'm starting at a negative. No, you're not. All you did was just change the asset. You paid taxes on the money, and now you've put it into a place where effectively the growth on that asset from that point in 5 years will be income tax free.
There you go.
Based on the Internal Revenue Code. So these are the conversations we have. And is this going to be better for you? And then you don't have to think about taking RMDs off of that money you converted.
And then you just brought up the idea of timing. And I know we don't say don't try to time the market, but you can try to time your conversion. If the market is down, that does give you the opportunity to convert that money, and then hopefully the market goes back up, and then you can recover that tax bill that you just paid. So there's a lot to talk about when it comes to the idea of moving money from an IRA or a 401k over to a Roth. And let's have that conversation, because for many of us, it's going to be our biggest retirement asset. Let's have that conversation. Give Mark a look on the website, moretoretire.com. That's moretoretire.com, or it's 984-300-1984. No cost, no obligation look at your retirement. This might be one of your big questions out there. Should I convert some of my 401k? Let's get it answered for you. 984-300-1984. Well, as long as we're talking about 401ks here, there was an interesting conversation with Charles Payne, and you may know him from Fox Business. He was being interviewed by the people at Yahoo Finance, and they were talking about 401ks and the tax time bomb that goes along with it. We were told the pensions were going away. We're going to give you this thing called a 401k. You can put money in it. You can even tell it where to go because you've got more say in where it's invested and how much is invested. It all seemed like a really cool thing, and now we're using them. And now there's taxes involved with it, and we're going, okay, not as great as what we thought. Well, Charles Payne was asked, do you think the 401k is dead?
I don't know that it's dead. I will say, though, that the 401k hasn't lived up to the hype. And I think that's one of the problems, right? And every year they come out and they'll say we have this many 401k millionaires, right? And it sounds like a huge number. That's cool. Then you say, well, how many people have a 401k? And it's like 0.03% of everyone with one. So the promise was that if you just put this money in, it was going to end up being worth a lot of money. And I don't know that it's dead, but I think people have to approach it differently. And I think they're starting to, particularly like the 60-40 portfolio. I think that's a huge mistake. On the 40 side, 40% in bonds, I think is just a massive mistake at this point.
So were it not for the 401k, a lot of us probably wouldn't have a whole lot of savings, because it's almost like forced savings. We got into it, and then we just forgot about it, and it came out of our check, and we didn't even think about it, and here we are at retirement. Look, I've got some money to retire on. But there are some warts in that 401k. Mark, do you think the 401k will go away? Do you think they'll change it? Do you think they'll add income to it? What do you see with the 401k?
They're already starting to change 401k plans. Mm-hmm. Little by little, they're starting to allow different things, modify things. They've thrown in the Roth 401k for a lot of people and providers. People with 403bs out there through like hospitals and schools, they're starting to do Roth 403bs too as well, because they realize they have to offer both. The thrift savings plan for the government, the TSP, they're offering a Roth TSP. This is becoming more common. And so you see this because they don't want to be responsible for a person saying, you left me with this tax ticking time bomb. Mm-hmm. Well, here's the other thing. Sometimes this is the best way for people to save. You get to defer the taxes instead of receiving the income itself. You set it and forget it. You don't think about it. And sometimes it ends up being a pile of money that the person needs to live off of for income. Perfectly fine. We can work from all angles, whatever is needed for the person. If this is what you need to retire on, just understand the pluses and minuses, and then we move forward. Now, if it's another way we can do it differently, yeah, but they're changing these plans left and right. They're offering different investments. Mm-hmm. You know me, you know how much I love life cycle funds, right, Randy? So no, truthfully, those target date funds, I'm just never going to be thrilled with them, because that's a set it, forget it. You can actually individually affect it better. If you look at the different investments they offer, look at the 1-year return, the 3-year return, the 5-year return, the 10-year return. Just because a 1-year return shows 17%, if you see the 5-year return it says 3%, well, you ought to think about that. How much time do I have before I retire, and where do we want to get this return from? That's why I always tell people, look, if you're going to be my client and you're stuck in this 401k, I'd be glad to help you effectively address how you're invested.
There's a lot of money in 401ks and IRAs in this country. There's trillions of dollars. And when you think of it from a government standpoint, they've kind of got this figured out because, as we get to RMDs, then the government gets their check. If there's trillions of dollars in these accounts, the government is going to benefit from that tax bill, right? They're going to get those taxes starting at RMDs. So I can't see the 401k going away, but I can see them making more changes to it. But you and I have talked about this, that some of the things that they're adding, like Bitcoin and private equity and hedge funds and a number of different things that seem very risky and probably better for younger people than it would be for our audience, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah. If you're starting to invest all in on cryptocurrency for your retirement plan, I wouldn't. I would not look at that as a retirement plan.
Yeah.
A retirement plan, if you want to mess around with cryptocurrency, that's one thing because that's kind of your play money, right? That's what you want to hopefully address and hit the lottery, okay? Mm-hmm. It can happen. There's a lot of coins out there that have made people some money, but if you're relying on that for your retirement and your future retirement income, no. What you need to do is you need to look at the market, because if you got a 401k, you got a lot of market options of what the plan provides. Now, if you've hit 59 and a half or you're separated from the job, well, now you've opened yourself up to other opportunities, and that's where we can help you directly in the market with other particular investments, and that's what we want to do. We want to help people address these things and grow their money so when it's time to retire, we can start to put in preservation tactics for the income and prepare for taxes and inflation. And again, we got this tax issue that pops up, but ultimately, do we want to help you address your current investments and how we could do things differently? The answer is always yes.
You're listening to the Marc Oslar Retirement Experience, and online you can find Marc at moretoretire.com. Pretty easy, moretoretire.com. There's the website, tool around, learn more about Marc. You'll see the 5 steps that we're going to talk about here in just a couple of minutes, which the process that you would go through if you gave Marc a call. We'll talk through that. But to sit down and talk about your retirement, just get a date on a calendar and say, okay, here's where I am. I'm 2 years out. I've saved this much. This is what we want to do in retirement. Am I headed for any problems? Am I going to have enough money? Am I going to run out of money? What's missing right here that I'm not even thinking of? That's where the conversation starts, and we'll do that at no cost or obligation. 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984, or online again, moretoretire.com. We're going to take a break. We're going to talk about spring cleaning here just a little bit. What would that be if you were spring cleaning your portfolio? And we're going to talk about the markets and the influence of AI. It is soaring. I found a company, it took them 37 years to get to $100 billion in market value. It took him 3 days to get to $200 billion. That's kind of scary. We'll talk about that coming up on the Marc Oslar Retirement Experience.
A simple piece of paper. It's something we use every day. For the most part, it does what it's designed to do. It sits there flat on your desk as a placeholder for information. But with a couple strategic folds, suddenly your flat piece of paper becomes an airplane and flies across the room. Your 401k is kind of like that flat piece of paper. It just sits there as a placeholder for your money. Marc Oslar can show you those strategic moves to take your 401k from just sitting there to creating the income you need for retirement. Call today for a free no-obligation meeting. 984-300-1984. That's 984-300-1984. Or online at moretoretire.com.
Welcome back to the Marc Oslar Retirement Experience. Online, it is moretoretire.com. Getting an inventory of where you are right now is really an important thing as you get toward retirement. Just seeing, are my ducks all in a row here? Do I have what I need? Do I have the advice I need? Now you start to look down the line. Am I prepared for what might come my way? And what might come my way? Well, let's get all that down on paper for you. 984-300-1984 is the number to have a no-cost, no-obligation meeting with Marc. Let's talk about your retirement, get your questions answered. 984-300-1984. Well, at our house right now, we are doing some remodeling. We're doing some kitchen stuff. We're just getting everything all ready to go for the summer and the new year and all of this. And at the same time, we're getting rid of a lot of clutter. We're just, as you go through and you start cleaning, you go, okay, don't need that. Haven't used that for 5 years. This is out. Don't need that. Okay, let's talk about finding clutter and doing a little spring cleaning in our portfolio. This might be something that you do, Mark, as somebody comes to you for the first time and you kind of make an evaluation of what they've done, where their money is, how it's working, or how it's not working. So what would you discover if you went in, and what is common for moves, I guess, when you sit down and look at somebody's portfolio?
So from a personal standpoint, and I've shared this with you many times, and you know this about me, but I have 4 daughters, right? 25, 21, 13, and 9. Mm-hmm. They are beautiful, beautiful women, and they keep me really busy. And the one thing that me and my wife have been doing now for several months is decluttering all the stuff we've built up over these 20 plus years. Mm-hmm. And so we are spring cleaning. Yeah, no, it's yearly cleaning. We are effectively trying to get rid of some things and clean stuff up. I used to do this for clients. When it was necessary for me to travel throughout this state, throughout Virginia and other places, that's what I would do. And I remember effectively going through different things. I remember looking at stock certificates, calling the company, see if they were active, see what happened to it, where the things went. And we would clean up everything for our clients and say, this is what you need to keep. We're shredding everything else. We're burning everything else. We're getting rid of everything else. Well, now we fast forward and you ask me about spring cleaning in your portfolio. Yeah, it's not just about getting rid of documents and things and stuff. It's also about cleaning up what you're invested in, where you're at, what you're trying to accomplish. Does it align with your vision for the future? A lot of folks will ask me, I don't have an income plan outside of Social Security. Well, we all know the Social Security Trust Fund is going to be exhausted by 2032 if they don't change anything, which effectively over a 4-year period of time, as we said, will reduce Social Security by up to 28%. Mm-hmm. If that happens, are we prepared? And do we have the income provisions built in? Are we working off a fixed bucket of money? You and I have discussed this before. Income riders with annuities. Mm-hmm. This is a real conversation to have. Is it necessary in your situation to have an income rider because you're working off a fixed bucket of money? And will this provide the income you need in retirement? These are the real conversations we have. And then, are we effectively addressing your risk tolerance? One of the first things we do is we run a report that helps us identify several things about how you're invested in the market, and does it align with what you're trying to do now and in 3 years and in 5 years and so on and so forth. So these are the things we do. And yeah, cleaning up, we're ready to clean up. We're here. We are ready to meet you and have you effectively come into our office and talk and have a conversation. But in order to send a report to me, the easiest way, go to my website, moreToRetire.com. You say, hey, I want to talk to you, Mark. Scroll to the bottom of the page. You enter your information. I'll get an email. I'll see it. Our team will reach out to you. And if you want to send me a statement, it's in the top right-hand corner of every single page on my website. It says secure upload. It's the easiest way. We'll find out you sent the stuff to us securely, and we'll go ahead and run reports for you and get some answers for you.
Yeah, I think that we are all creatures of habit for the most part. And to think about it, you had to make a decision at some point when you were looking at your first 401k and somebody said, well, put it in an index fund and put it in a bond fund and you're good to go. Okay, then you leave that job and you go to your next job and you go, well, that's what I did last time, so I'll do it again. Index fund, bond fund. And pretty soon you've got 3 jobs, 3 401ks, and you're in the same thing in every single one. So if the market goes down, all of that goes down. That's called overlapping. And Mark, this is something that you can identify. If everything's going the same direction, if the market goes the other direction, that's not good, is it?
No, and that's the thing. You brought up the idea of correlation, right? Mm-hmm. Things moving in the same direction. So if we identify that our portfolio has too much positive or high degree of correlation, if we actually have a correction, anything like we did in the last 2 recessions, it could dramatically affect your bottom line for your money. So our last 2 recessions, 2000 to 2002, the S&P dropped 49%. From 2007 to 2009, it dropped 56.5%. During that period of time, people were calling their 401k a 201k because it fell in half, it broke in half. Mm-hmm. Do you want to take that kind of risk, have that kind of correlation right before you retire, knowing what if? We are in a war, okay? Geopolitical risk is the number one risk to the markets. Am I saying that that's what's going to change? No, but you should understand what we're facing as a country, as an economy before you retire. Is that going to have an impact on your retirement?
One of the other things that I see that you can sit down with people and talk through, Mark, is what's missing. I mean, when you think about if somebody goes into their retirement and then basically they're saving in a 401k their whole life, your 401k was built for growth, because there's things in there that you put money into that are built for growth. It is also, you can have a certain amount of control over risk because some things are going to be more risky than others. But your 401k has very little income producing assets to it. And that's something that you're going to need. So I think, Mark, that we need purpose for whatever we have now, and there might be new purpose as you go into retirement. It's not as much growth anymore. It's more about income, and what you've been bringing to the table isn't producing income. So now it's time to explore all the other options to find those three main things that we talk about: preservation, income, and growth.
Right on the money. And that's the thing. What stage of life are you in? Accumulation, or have you gotten to the point where you realize you've accumulated enough or close to enough, and now we want to preserve what we work our whole lives for and be certain that we know we have good, sensible growth, but we're in preservation and distribution. How do we distribute our funds to ourselves properly? Are we getting enough money? Are we prepared for taxes and inflation? How does it affect everything? Well, let's build in the preservation tactics for the income, and then we can take some risk with the rest of the money and grow it properly.
Well, let's talk about the steps, because this seems like a perfect time to do so. If you go to Mark's website, which is moretoretire.com, you're going to see the steps that Mark will bring you through. And really, the very first step is reaching out and saying, hey, let's sit down and have a meeting. And then it's that treetop view. Tell me about that and bring me through the steps that you help people, and eventually they become a client, and you're helping them walk their way through retirement.
Yeah, so treetop view is our macroeconomics look at what we're doing. We're looking at the big buckets of money from the very top, and we're trying to identify and understand how we use these buckets of money and how we effectively address your needs, and then eventually, of course, your wants as well. So we want to understand that. Then sometimes we combine steps 1 and 2 together, discovering your retirement desires and dreams. So we have these two together, understanding. If we understand the big picture of what you're doing when you're retiring, when you want to retire, what you want to do in retirement, what income level is going to make sense, how we prepare for taxes and inflation during that, then we can personalize step 3, personalize your plan, and you can become a client. When you become a client, then we're going to do 2 things for you. We're always going to look at adjustments, switches, and changes, because we do have to shift throughout the years as things change. Everything doesn't usually remain static or the same. And then last but not least, we're going to give you the ongoing support you need, step 5. And so we're going to be here for you. And that's under our process guide, under process tab on our website.
You're listening to the Marc Oslar Retirement Experience, and to go online and find exactly what Mark just told you right now, moretoretire.com. Just spell all that out, moretoretire.com. There you'll find a place where you can put some information there, and Mark will reach out to you, and we can go through that process that Mark is talking about. You can also skip all that and just give him a call and say, hey, I'd like a meeting. Let's get a date on a calendar. 984-300-1984. This is a no-cost, no-obligation meeting. Just to sit down, get your questions answered. What have you got? What have you saved? Where is that going? Does it have a purpose? Is there something that could work better? 984-300-1984. All right, so when we talk about the market right now, you can't help but talk about the effect of all of this AI that's happening. The market looks 6 months down the line, 1 year down the line, and that's why you see all these AI companies just exploding. Micron took 37 years to reach a market value of $100 billion. In 3 days, they went to $200 billion. That is unprecedented growth. And I think that I've started to read some articles now where we're getting to the Jerry Maguire area here now. Show me the money. They're looking at these AI companies and saying, okay, we're investing. It's time for you to show us something. So I don't know what the future of AI is as far as market is concerned. But one of the things that this article said to us is it's as if you've got to have one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake at the same time. That's kind of a jerky kind of a trip down the road. But Mark, that's kind of what you have to do, is watch that we don't lose all the growth, but we also, if it turns the other direction, we don't want to lose everything that we've put in here. So
that's right.
Talk to me about finding that balance.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, here's the thing. World Wide Web, remember? Mm-hmm. Remember when it happened? Okay. Yeah. Were we expecting or understanding or knowing that it was just a big business model? Did we have any idea?
Yeah, no idea what the internet was going to do to the world. And, you know, when we were in one of these before, and it turned out to be the internet, and it worked really good. But we also had a crash in 2000 when that happened too, didn't we?
.com,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That .com bubble happened, and it was the beginning of it all. It was like, whoa, we're all making money. Everything's growing. Things are fantastic. And then it happened, the bubble. Now, could there be an AI bubble? Of course there could be an AI bubble. Things could be overvaluated in the market. All of these things could occur. The question is, are you too far in to certain stocks to the point where you're not in a position where you're really doing retirement planning for yourself? You're really taking some chances out there, and could you get burned? Well, you better just pay attention, real close attention, because we don't know how this is going to happen or how it's going to be laid out, because this is a first for us. We know that AI has been around, but it's now just getting kind of big, right? So everybody's throwing their hat into the pile. The question is, do you have too much in an area that could effectively hurt your retirement plans? And that's really important to understand. So I'm not saying it's going to be like the .com bubble. What I'm saying is we saw what happened with the .com bubble, and we're seeing something that it's been around.
Yeah.
This has happened before. And could it happen again? And the answer is yes. Do you have to risk what you worked your whole life for? The answer is no. Do I believe in the market? Do I believe in us doing some really good planning in the market with ETFs and certain equities? Absolutely. I'm a huge believer in it. The question is not that. The question is, are you balanced properly? Do you have your preservation tactics built in for retirement, and so on and so forth? And it's not by just picking out a bunch of AI stocks.
You're listening to the Marc Oslar Retirement Experience. Online, it is moretoretire.com. There's a lot for us to consider out there. Markets and the geopolitical stuff that we talk about. We didn't expect that there would be a war in January, and then in February, here we go. And now gas prices are doing what they're doing. There is just a lot of wind that throws us back and forth in our finances, and to have an all-weather portfolio so that you don't have to worry every time gas prices go up 30 cents or 50 cents or $1. I think that's important to have that built into your plan. Let's sit down and talk through all of that. You know, it's going to cost you more to live as you continue on for the next 25 years. It's also going to bring a lot of this crazy stuff that we see right now. I mean, who would have thought this last year? Give Mark a call. Let's talk through it, and let's put down something on paper for you. Get a plan for your retirement. 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984. Or the website is moretoretire.com. Also know that we have a podcast of this show and all our past shows, so you can find those on iTunes and Spotify. Look up the Marc Oslar Retirement Experience, and you can revisit some of that. If you're listening to the show, you like what you hear, and you got to get out of the car. We understand that happens. You know, you get in the car, 15 minutes later, you're there. Okay. Well, you can hear this entire show on iTunes or Spotify. Just look up the Marc Oslar Retirement Experience. All right. So one of the things about your job, Mark, is you'll sit down with some people in their 60s or 50s, and it'll be a couple. And then you'll work with them through their retirement years. And then somewhere along the line, there might be a meeting with one person, not necessarily two. Losing a spouse in retirement is a reality. And the article that I found said basically this: when you lose a spouse, the IRS rubs salt in the wound. And I will tell you this, we all talk about 401ks and IRAs and all the tax difficulties that go along with that. But losing a spouse in retirement is also a kick in the gut when it comes to your tax liabilities, because you've gone from two people to one, a couple filing to single, and this really can have a hard effect on the person who's left behind. Mark, can you give me some numbers? Can you talk about tax brackets? Can you say, you know, what is it that a spouse left behind deals with along with the grief of losing their spouse?
So obviously, if you lose a spouse in a particular year, that's going to be the year where you're going to probably want to do certain things tax-wise, because when you start looking at it, obviously the following year after that, you're going to be going to a single file tax bracket because you have the joint married file and jointly. That's a big deal, all right? So that's one of the things you first start thinking about. And a lot of times when you lose a spouse, you don't want to make decisions all at once because sometimes it gets to be kind of emotional. What I say is let's take our time, let's look at these things and how can we effectively address what you want to do from this point. What we want to do is hopefully say, hey, we're ready for this. We were prepared for this. Your income's going to be just fine, and you're going to be still in your retirement mode, and nothing's going to change. We just have to shift this, this, and this. But that's the objective, is to be an advisor that's proactive and has helped you make some decisions ahead of time so that when this does occur, we only have to make certain modifications, maybe even make some planning tools for taxes during retirement the year that your spouse passes away.
You think about it, you lose a spouse, that's really, really hard. Then you lose a Social Security check. That's really hard. Then you lose your filing status. And now the IRS looks at you like you're a single person, and now every piece of income that you had when you were with your spouse, that's not coming in anymore, but now all of a sudden you moved from the 12% tax bracket to the 22% tax bracket, and now you're getting hammered with taxes along with that. It doesn't seem fair. It probably isn't fair, but I mean, this is the reality of dealing with the loss of a spouse in your retirement years. So not only is it an emotional thing, it's a financial thing as well, isn't it?
It is. And the other thing that we want to address is that usually the spouses, with each other, they're saying, I just want to make sure you're taken care of. Right. I get it. Now, here's the thing. What I have seen over the years is if a wife loses a husband, they tend to not be as hungry about meals anymore because they're just feeding themselves. And they might not have their grandkids around or their kids around as a possibility as well. These are the real conversations we have. And then you're buying less food, less this, less that. So it's less income. And then also more taxes as well. So it's a little rough in the sense that maybe it's not ideal, but what we can say is if we're prepared for it, it won't be an issue. Why? Why do I state this? Because if we understand and effectively address this ahead of time, then we're prepared for making the adjustments we need to when the time comes when you lose that spouse. It's not going to change how you feel. You go 3 years, 5 years, and the bottom line is you still lost that life partner, and it's very difficult. It's always going to be challenging. You're always going to miss that person. There's going to be days where it's easier. You're always going to miss that person, but it's okay. What we do here at Marc Oslar Retirement Experience is we are your family. We're here to help you effectively address what you're doing, and we care about you. It's not just about the retirement planning. It's about a relationship. Sure, we'll help you with the numbers, the figures, the income, the tax liability. We'll bring in the tax experts. We'll bring in the estate planners that need to be brought in for the attorneys. But the bottom line is you're going to have a real relationship with us, and that's what we're looking for.
When you think about that, if something like that were to happen, who are the first people you would call? You'd probably call your kids and you'd call your friends, but you're also going to call your financial advisor. He's going to be on that list. That's going to be one of those hard conversations. I can see what this is going to do to me in this part of my life, and I have to make preparations, but you're also going to say, what's it going to do to me that way? And Mark, this is another reason that we talk about how it's so important for couples to come to the meeting, the retirement meeting, because like in my house, my wife pays all the bills, okay? I do all the retirement stuff, all right? So she doesn't know what I'm doing, and I don't know what she's doing. So if I lose her, I'm screwed. I got to get my bills paid. And if she loses me, it's like, well, what's the strategy for my retirement for the next couple of years? And I don't know that financial advisor. That was a relationship he put together. And then there's a terrible stat in this industry that says that when a spouse dies, 80% of women or more leave their financial advisor. And it's not because of a lack of performance. It's because of a lack of relationship. She didn't have the same kind of relationship with that person that her husband did. So there's a lot to consider there, isn't there, Mark?
Yes, and that's why I always share. I like to see both spouses available so they know who they're dealing with, who they're working with, and I want them to be on board the same way. Even though one might make the decision more than the other, I need to see them both effectively feeling comfortable with who they're working with me. I want to make sure that you are comfortable working with me and the decisions we make together, because we're a team. So even though one person might affect the transactions more than the other, we still want them all to be a part of it because it's important. Have skin in the game and understand what you're dealing with, who you're dealing with, and we want to affect that relationship in a positive way. We're looking for good, positive relationships, and we're here to help you.
You use that word relationship, and I think that that's important because, they talk about policewomen, that they'll see somebody on the worst day of their life. Something terrible has happened, and they're right in the middle of that. Well, think about the calls that you would make to your financial advisor. Something like this happened, loss of a spouse, or you get a bad diagnosis, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, my husband's going to have to go into long-term care. What does that mean to me? These are the kind of calls that Marc gets, and the kind of person that you're going to want to have with you so you can make that call and you can say, how can you help? I don't know how to move forward. I don't know what to do. Can you help me? Marc goes through retirement a lot. You're going to go through it once. So let's have that relationship, build that relationship to sit down and see if Marc is the right guy for you. Let's have that conversation. Here's the number. Here's the website. It's a no-cost, no-obligation look at your retirement to just sit down and talk through your questions. 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984. Or use the website, which is more2retire.com. There's a place for you to put a little information in there, and Marc will reach out to you. more2retire.com. That is all the time that we have on the show for today. We thank you so much for listening. Remember, this show will be on our podcast as well, iTunes and Spotify. We'll be here next week. We hope you will be too. Have a great weekend.
Insurance products are offered through the insurance business Marc Oslar Retirement Experience. Marc Oslar Retirement Experience is also an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through Impact Partnership Wealth LLC, a registered investment advisor. IPW does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by Marc Oslar Retirement Experience are not subject to investment advisor requirements. Investing involves risks, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing carrier. This radio podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be considered as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. Marc Oslar Retirement Experience is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during the show shall constitute legal or tax advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein are provided by third parties that have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Marc Oslar Retirement Experience. Market Guard is a firm that provides investment signals as well as portfolio allocation recommendations for a wide variety of model portfolios. Market Guard does not offer advice or enter into fiduciary relationships. Please remember that converting an employer plan account to a Roth IRA is a taxable event. Increased taxable income from the Roth IRA conversion may have several consequences. Be sure to consult with a qualified tax advisor before making any decisions regarding your IRA.